All right, this is exciting. We're meeting with Ann-Landi, who's written for Art News forever. Well, not really, only a couple months.
Not anymore.
And is now the founder and the
Editor.
Editor.
And
No,
a writer.
that's not a pithy enough word.
Photo editor.
There you
Podcaster.
go. Of Vasari 21. There you go. Oh, shimmy. And there you go. Vasari21.com. How are you?
I guess I'm okay.
Good.
I'm having a battle with my former landlord. That's no fun. And I see people here I know. I see Mimi. And
good. I was hoping you might.
And before I go on and start yakking about myself, I just want to say one thing about Dan Cameron. And I did a podcast with Dan that's on the site. I think his Facebook roster is full. But if you're really, really nice to me, I'll give you his email address.
There you go. I got everybody muted so you can't all see them, hear them genuflecting.
Well, that's good.
No, but it's nice that it's nice that you have fans here. Your turn?
I thought so.
Okay, go ahead.
What would you like me to do, Paul? Do you want an autobiography here?
Where did you grow up?
I grew up primarily in the suburbs of New York and then in Manhattan itself.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to the Birchwaffen School, which is right behind.
Don't bother, but where?
It's right behind the Frick Museum. It's the largest townhouse in Manhattan, and it's now owned by a guy who has been in trouble for child pornography and for soliciting underage girls.
I'm not going to ask the next question. Did you? But then,
I was long gone. I'm walking by my old high school one night. The doors are open. They are installing this immense chandelier, and I thought, oh my God! And then I kind of read up on it and found out. I don't even know if the school's still around.
Did you used to hang out at the Frick?
No, I used to hang out at the Penguin Coffee Shop.
Well, that's almost as exciting.
No, I did go to the Frick quite a bit, though.
Were there decisions about college? Was it an artful decision, or were you involved in were you a writer, or what? Well,
I was kind of torn in high school. I loved to draw. I loved to paint. I was good at writing. Originally, I wanted to go to the Cornell College of Art and Architecture, but I got into Princeton instead, and it was first class of women, and everybody said, you have to go to Princeton! And so I did.
Sorry, I think that's probably a good choice.
Well, it was, except I really still had this bug to be making paintings. So I was briefly what they call, air quotes, a studio arts major, which was a very, very bad thing to be doing at Princeton. And I had a studio, and I was painting, and my advisor was Michael Graves before he was Michael Graves. And he used to come to my studio, and he was wall-eyed. So he would like cough one eye this way.
Swear on that too?
And then he would spout a lot of Noam Chomsky, which I couldn't relate it to art. And after about a year of that, I said, look, this is a waste of my money, my parents' money, and my education, and I studied art history.
Focusing on what?
Basically modern and contemporary. I was very fortunate to have Sam Hutter as a professor. I don't know if you...
Great people.
He died a couple of years.
Michael Graves I never liked. You
didn't like him?
I thought he had a really bad personality and a dirty mouth. And anybody with a
dirty mouth?
Yeah. And I think anyone with a dirty mouth has got to be really filthy because I have a dirty mouth.
Well, I'll tell you what was fantastic about him for students. This is something none of the other professors did. He took us on studio visits. So we went to visit Jack Youngerman, and we went to visit Christo, and we went to visit, oh God, people I can't even remember who have long been. That was extraordinary.
Oh God, yes. That's really cool. So what happened after school?
That's a very good question. The lost years. No, I worked for a year for a book publisher. I was bored silly, so I applied to Columbia for graduate school in art history, and they were kind enough to admit me and give me a fellowship and a stipend and stuff like that.
So we continued the ivory towerness. Then what happened?
Well, you kind of go, since I was studying art history, I wanted to go where I thought I would have the greatest professors, the best professors. You know, we wanted to talk eventually about women in the art world. And I don't know if you want me to yak about that a little now.
Well, okay. So, all right. So, can I ask a loaded question? Can we put a date on this period somehow without, and you know, keep it respectable?
May I quote Oscar Wilde?
I don't know what you're going to quote, but go right ahead. Sure. Yeah. No. I think I know what you're going to say.
Never ask a woman her real age, because if she'll tell you that, she will tell you anything.
Thank you, Oscar. So
I was at grad school. I got my master's in '78.
Thank you. And that's fine. And was being a woman, how many women were there? How many people were in the department? How many were women?
But the problem was the student body was, I would guess, probably 80% women. The faculty was 98% male.
Right.
And there was I had a colleague, a fellow student, who was told by the chairman of the department, James Beck, famous Renaissance art historian, that she could not be an art historian and have a family, that kind of stuff. There was one tenured female faculty member in the grad department, and that was Edith Parada, who was a crusty old dame and just wonderful. And then there was one teacher on the Barnard faculty, which was not considered university faculty. So I don't know, it just felt like a very strange environment. And
the sense that your options were limited, more so than.
Well, I was kind of dumb. I think if I had it to do all over again, I would have become a curator. I didn't even think about a museum career. So the academic jobs were very, very tight. I didn't relish the idea of teaching in Podunk City, Iowa. So I basically, after I got my master's, I just left and did other things.
Which were art or not art?
Oh, a little pole dancing here and there, that sort of thing. No, I was very ambitious. I was going to write the authorized biography of Rodin. I was 25 years old.
Okay.
And, I got a very polite letter from the Musée Rodin saying basically, Mademoiselle, we can't open the archives to you. It's, French law and yada, yada. So I thought, hey, you know what? I think I'll write a novel about Rodin. I thought I was going to be the next Irving Stone. That didn't work out so well. And I had to make money, so I taught myself how to copy edit. And I got married, which I thought might be a career option, but it turns out not really.
Not really. So how did you get back into art?
Well, this is a rather long story, but I will attempt to shorten it. I worked for magazines for years. I worked for places like, they're now defunct, Manhattan Ink, Savvy Magazine. Where else did I work for? And then I started freelancing, and for Manhattan Ink, I wrote a few art pieces. And I did a whole bunch of stuff. I wrote for GQ, I wrote for Travel and Leisure, I wrote for God Help Me Self magazine. But it's how you learn the business, and it's how you learn to write, and it's how you learn to write for a specific kind of audience. Then fast forward a couple of years, I moved to San Francisco with my ex-husband. I hated San Francisco. I know people say all the time, oh, how can you hate San Francisco? Well, I couldn't find a job. So I went back to New York. He stayed in San Francisco. And there was a job opening at Art News. And I waltzed in with my fancy Ivy League degrees, my journalism experience.
And this is what, 1992 or 3 or 88 or?
God, you have a sharp mind, don't you?
Milton Estero?
It was Milton Estero. It's around 91, 92, 93, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So I was on staff for 2 years, and it was just extraordinary. It was an amazing experience. I was writing profiles of artists. I was writing reviews. I was writing book reviews. I was writing gossip items. I was writing, just about anything, reporting. It was, but after 2 years, I just don't like working in offices anymore. So I started freelancing, and then I was writing for other places, the Times, the Wall Street Journal, Smithsonian, Art and Auction. Hey, any place that would send me a check, basically.
Do you do a lot of research, or did you do a lot of research for your writing? Is that typical?
Not anymore. No.
Are you sure?
Ask me
I mean, the stuff I'm reading that you're writing currently feels like it's been researched.
I do as best I can, but as the time is so tight that I don't do half the research I used to do. And
well, I'm trying to. I mean, I know how I learned art history. How did you learn art history?
How did I learn art history?
Yeah.
You sit there and you look at slides.
Did you learn? Did you learn a lot of it from writing, or
then you read?
Was everything learned in school, and you didn't double your knowledge by writing?
How do you mean that?
Your art historical knowledge, the artists that you interviewed, the trends, the flow, the movement, all that.
Well, I would say what happened was my knowledge of contemporary art just expanded exponentially. I mean, this is like, these are real artists. These are superstars. These are real curators. These are people who are working in the art business everywhere. So it's less about history and it's more about reporting. It's more about the contemporary scene. But occasionally I would do like an art historical piece. I once picked up a magazine where I had written something about American Impressionism, and I was waiting for an artist friend to have some work framed, and I start reading the thing, and I thought, yes, this is really pretty smart. And I realized I wrote it.
Yep.
10 years ago.
I know. Wish I remembered it. All right, so
basically, where I am now, shall we?
No.
I'll let you ask questions.
I'm going to jump shifting. It seems to me that up until, I don't know, sometime 1980, I picked that out of my hat. It seemed to me, maybe a little earlier, that the history of art is about the contemporary artist pressing against the establishment, against the academy.
Okay.
And
1980 might even be a little light.
Yeah, that's I went with that. So let's go back to 1970, maybe a little earlier, but not much. So that basically there was essentially a kind of role that existed for artists for over 1,000 years. And now the role of the artist is different than the last 50 years.
Yeah, you also have to realize the art world, especially the New York art world, was a much, much smaller place and a much more elitist place, I would say, and probably a more sexist place.
Yeah, totally. But I'm going back before there was a New York art world. Let's go back to the Renaissance. Let's go back to Florence. Let's go back to Rome. Let's go back to Greece.
Anytime, baby, you get the tickets, and I'm there.
But it was always pressing against the academy.
But I would disagree with that, because I would think, in the Renaissance system, you didn't have art galleries. You had people who were innovators. Sure. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
But there has been an academy. There was the academy that the Carracci trio, the cousin and two brothers, established in Bologna. There were art academies. And one of the reasons women had a hard time was they generally weren't admitted.
I mean, the academy is a euphemism for the establishment.
Okay, but the establishment were the patrons.
No, but you're right. Yeah, so you weren't pressing against that until when, then? 1880, 1800?
I want to say not till the Impressionists, almost. They were the ones who did the Salon des Refugiés. They were the ones who...
Yeah, maybe a little earlier, but not much. Okay, I sit corrected. Okay, so we now have at least 3 phases we've identified. What I want to do, besides admitting I was wrong, is look at the difference how artists function now as opposed to how artists functioned 100 years ago.
Okay, 100 years ago is going to be...
Pick Duchamp or pick Picasso.
Let's go right before the First World War.
Yep.
How's it different? Can we talk specifically about art in France, which is where the avant-garde was really going wild?
Here, talk about art in France versus art in America today.
Fewer galleries, for one thing, a little lesser interest. I mean, everybody knows the stories. Let's go to the post-impressionists. Everybody knows the stories of Van Gogh and Gauguin and the suffering and the poverty and the what have you. I think there was probably a great deal more camaraderie in some ways.
Okay.
But yes, I think they were quite deliberately looking to overthrow the status quo, which was the salon in France for a very, very long time, which is where dudes like Bouguereau and who are those other kitschy painters? They're not considered so kitschy anymore. But there was there was an establishment. There was the Épaté la bourgeoisie.
All right, so let's segue from.
Oh, Mimi, I'm boring you. Come back.
No, but I want to move to the taking the same content or notion, women. How did Mary Cassatt ever, besides being really good, how come people paid attention?
How come she what?
Why did people pay attention to Mary Cassatt?
She was a very good friend of Degas, and she was also very good, and she exhibited with the Impressionists. She was one of the few women. Morisot is another.
Okay. So mostly it's anomalies and or tight relationships.
I'm sorry?
An anomaly or with Marceau, is it a relationship?
Because I can't tell you. I don't know how many women were trying to be Impressionists. Painters get lost art history all the time. Those are the two that have stayed in the history books. For whatever reason, Morisot was married to Manet's brother. And Manet probably had a little bit of a crush on her. But these are the people that we know from art history. If I were a diligent art historian, I could probably go back and look at the newspapers. I could read the contemporary journals. I could see if there were women around. But these are the ones who stayed in the books.
Interesting, yeah, because I've looked at like auction records from the 20s, and there's so many artists selling for $1 million that I'd never heard of. Million being, again, a euphemism, but for a lot of money that have gone out of favor.
I think there are feminist art historians who are looking into this very seriously, and all the time are getting...
Oh, there must be.
Women are coming out of the shadows. And tastes change so much.
Like Susie Frulinghausen.
I'm sorry?
Susie Frulinghausen. She was Charles Morris's wife, I think. Was that the right artist? She was better than him. Anyway, how, in the time that you've been immersed in the art world, how has women and the role of women evolved?
Well, I just cited to you the example of Mr. Beck, Professor Beck, telling an art history student she couldn't have a family and a career. Then about, let's fast forward a bit more, around, I want to say 95, 96, I wrote a story on how the success of women in the art world has changed, covering a broad spectrum of people, talking about artists, talking about dealers, talking about museum curators. We still have no director of a major New York museum, unless you count Alma Golden at the studio, the museum in Harlem. I do count her. But Linda Nochlin once made the remark that the art historian that a woman will never be Pope in New York. It's not going to happen. But anyway, let me go back to the story. So I talked to a whole lot of dealers. I talked to curators. I said, how is it changing? And I remember talking to Holly Solomon, and she said, well, when I first started in business, my husband had to sign papers for me to get a bank account for my business.
Wow.
And Marian Goodman said she had a couple of degrees in art history. She had a hell of a time getting loans to start a gallery. So I think in that respect, it's changed immensely. I think there are so many female curators coming up through the ranks. We're going to see a woman director at the Met. Well, maybe not the Met, but maybe not in my lifetime, but one of these days.
Yep, definitely.
But as far as it goes for artists, you look at auction prices, and that's where the inequities really come out, that a Jeff Koons is selling for $47 million. I don't know what a Louise Bourgeois goes for. And in my mind, she's a better artist, and she'll have more lasting value in art history. So that's not good. And I have artist friends who complain all the time. A friend, I won't say where she is because she wanted to remain anonymous. She was looking at her dealers' roster of artists. She noticed they were mostly male. She thinks there's a certain preferential treatment given to the males in the gallery. So it's changing. It's like politics. It's slow. It's very slow. And it's probably not where we want it to be yet. But it's getting there. The number of curators at MoMA who are female is huge. At, I don't know, what's the Met, I would think, probably. I'm thinking about major museums.
You raise interesting issues for me, because I began working with Marion Goodman when I had a gallery. I was working with her in the 70s. And
oh, you're an old guy too. Great.
Oh, shit, yeah. And I never realized, I mean, I always just looked, she was always way up there on some high pedestal, and I was always so impressed that she would work with me. And we worked together for 10 years or more on a lot of things. And on the other hand, I remember hiring a woman to be the director of my gallery early in the 90s. And the gallery's motto was contemporary abstraction. And she said, "You mean contemporary abstract men?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Look at your roster. You've got 17 artists and 14 of them are men." And I said, "You know, I never looked."
Well, here's another example. I did an interview with Carmen Herrera.
Brilliant artist.
10 years ago.
Good for you.
Messed up. But she's telling me the story of a woman dealer in the 50s who said to her, "We can't show you. We have to show the men because they have families to support." Now, bless her heart, Carmen's 102, and people are finally paying attention.
Yeah. Oh, God. Did you see what she said about Ellsworth Kelly recently?
No, I didn't. But she and Ellsworth were friends in Paris.
Yeah, well, she had a
history might have been a little bit different if somebody had paid attention to Carmen.
Oh, my, yeah. Should have. It's interesting. Tell me what you think about this. I've done so much research. You're the 7th person now that we've had, some kind of discussion on this topic, which is to say I have done very little research. And my sense is that most women under 45 feel like their life has not had much gender-based struggle, and that the women who've preceded them 45 or older do feel like they've had a significant amount of struggle, and then the women who are under that thank those who are over that approximate age for the difference that they have made.
I think that's a grievance of feminists of a certain age in every field, whether it's, journalism, politics, whatever, that they just had to fight harder to get where they are, and younger women take certain equity, shall we call them, for granted. So I don't think, it's kind of universal unless you're living in outer Mongolia.
Is it better or worse there? I was just watching a thing about a Mongolian girl eagle hunter for the first one, and how, it's the same issue, it's universal.
Well, I think the expectations for women may be so much greater now. I see women struggling with jobs and children and husbands, and if you're an artist and you have a family, your loyalties may be divided. I was just told, I know Agnes Martin used to just loathe the idea of children for a woman artist. She said, "You can't have children and be an artist." I've just recently heard that Marina Abramovic said the same thing. "I'm sorry, you can't be a mother and an artist. It's just not possible." So the pressures are greater in some ways. And I feel for women who might say, "Listen, I just want to stay home and raise the kids. That's what I want to do with my life."
A lot of the women that I work with have done that and come back to making art when their kids are in school.
I don't have a problem with that. I
don't have a problem with that either. I feel strongly that to be a complete artist, you should include all the facets in your life, and that being a parent is one of those facets, and being a mom is a significant one. And that, I think there's a prejudice against seeing mom content in art exhibits.
Well, I wanted to do a story on that for the site. So it was when, I first started out, and now I'm all of 8 months old. And I put it out to my artist members, and I said, "Do you want to talk about motherhood and art?" And I think only 2 people responded. Maybe It's still a bit of a taboo subject.
It's still a taboo subject. It's like that Chinese girl in the Olympics who said I could have performed better, but I was having my period. She didn't know that she wasn't supposed to say that, and she broke a taboo.
I wish she hadn't said that. I don't follow the Olympics, so.
Yeah, so...
Is any woman going to say, gee, I wish my art were better, but I was having my period? I wish my art were better when I was pregnant.
Maybe it was.
Actually, I did publish. Wait a minute. I published a wonderful essay on the site by an artist, Mimi probably knows her, Christine Taylor Patton, who lives in Penasco. And she wrote about how much her children brought to her art, even though her art has nothing to do with figurative imagery or anything, but how much she learned from them and grew from them. Another artist I just profiled, Melissa Stern, also talked about how having a child brought something to her work in the form of imaginative play, in the form of, you know, looking at different kinds of imagery, and the freedom to make the kind of work that she makes, which is very wonderfully comic and smart and kind of cartoony. So it's happening.
I worked with an artist who had commissioned an 8 by 10 foot painting for a hotel in Hong Kong. And after he had varnished the painting, his 3-year-old child ran across it. and he looked at it and said, I like it. And we sent the painting to Hong Kong, and they said, this painting is ruined. It's got children's footprints across it. And we said, no, it's artist's intent. It's perfect. And they said, oh, shit. But yeah, happens. I don't know. You go ahead, but let's open this up for you guys. Start thinking about things you'd like to ask Ann or that we should bring up. Ann, go ahead. Keep talking while they think about something.
I'll talk. They'll think. All right, what shall I talk about?
Tell me why you're in town.
I think I'm going to talk about my site, okay?
Yep, that's great. Do that.
Well, what happened with Art News was, as people may know or not know, about 2 years ago, they brought in a new editor, a new publisher. Milton sold the magazine. The new editor, of course, brings her troops along from the New York Observer. So basically, I was out of a job. The Wall Street Journal has cut back on its art writing. Between the Journal, Art News, and catalog essays, I could pretty much make a living. So I saw the handwriting on the wall, and I said, you know, I'm going to have my own website. And I also saw a gap, which you're trying to fill as well, in what the art magazines address, the audience they pitch to. Sometimes I don't even know who the audience is. There's no practical information. There's nothing on how to fix your website. Should you have a contract with your dealer? What are some of the scams and shams to look out for? This week I'm publishing a story on what should your dealer be doing for you. I did a studio visits piece, podcast with curators, dealers, critics, etc. I am very focused in my audience. They are not superstars, but they are artists who are aspiring, or they have made it in a comfortable way. They're, you know, artists of all stripes. I would rather not get people like, well, whose talents lie elsewhere, shall we say, but who are adventurous and who are, but they're still having a life. And they're not noticed by the magazines, except maybe for the occasional review. So this is where the internet is kind of taking off. So what else can I tell you? And I like profiling people whose work is new to me and who are just incredible. When I wrote for Art News, great, I get to write about Frank Stella, Linda Beglis, Nick Cave, Alex Katz, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's this whole other layer of artists who are so interesting and so good and have things to say. And for me, it's very exciting to discover new talent. It's not the same old New York crowd or Venice Biennale crowd or, you know, what have you. Okay.
Doesn't it feel more, authentic?
I'm sorry?
Doesn't it feel more authentic?
Is what more authentic?
Doesn't it feel more authentic? Doesn't it feel like you're more genuine? Doesn't it feel like you're making a difference?
It does, because people talk back to me. They write to me. They leave comments. I'm on Facebook all the time. You know, Kate's somebody I've written about. I haven't written about Mimi yet. But I'm sorry, I do confine it to members of the site because I got to give people priority. And this is how I make a living now. Yeah, it does. I could correct things immediately. When I worked for Art News, I think I got a single letter, and that was from Holly Solomon. I had artists who claimed, oh, well, I never read that profile.
So did you guys hear a moment, when we were talking earlier, I said, write to art writers because they like hearing from you. And I said, you have exhibits sometimes and maybe you get as many as 3 emails. And here's Ann talking about writing for a publication that had in the neighborhood of 80 to 100,000 subscribers.
That's right.
Huh?
That's right. And we seldom got letters to the editor.
And and maybe somebody would cancel their subscription because you misspelled their name, but other than that, you didn't get any,
No, there was very little feedback.
So, you are engaged actively now in growing relationships, and this is what I'm talking to artists of so much about doing, is growing relationships and talking about how people are accessible. And I think, you're entirely evidence of that, and I don't think you are an anomaly.
Oh, not? Okay.
Wait a minute. You are special. Special and anomaly are not
magical.
Magical. How long have you been in some people, where are your hand raises, people?
Oh, maybe they're getting tired there.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll pull them out of the woodwork. How long have you been in Taos?
5 years.
Why?
I ask myself that every few days.
Yeah? Is it magical?
Because Mimi, is it magical?
Mimi's muted.
And sometimes it's just, the views are extraordinary. The skies are amazing. I miss New York, but New York, I couldn't afford New York anymore. And the art world.
Sure. How about culture? Can the culture? Is there enough culture in Taos, and does the computer provide enough culture?
Mimi, I don't think there is. I have my grievances, but I'm not going to air them here.
Well, I get to Santa Fe. There could be more culture in Taos. Do you go to Santa Fe for more culture, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nothing like New York, but how many? New York has 800 galleries. How many of these can you keep track of as a writer, as an artist? There are communities, which I think is very healthy. There are communities in Bushwick. Young artists, I think even Bushwick is getting insanely expensive. And this is where artists help each other. They show up at each other's shows. They support each other. They help each other find dealers. There's more of a community. And yet Taos has an amazing number of really good artists, from world famous like Larry Bell to not so famous like Mimi Chen Ting. And
did you know Ken Price when he was there?
They make a living.
Did you know Ken Price?
I did not, regrettably. When I first came out here, I had an assignment to write about him, and he was too sick at the time to do an interview.
I represented him for a while, and he was an amazing man. Fascinating.
Everyone speaks so highly of him. And his wife, Happy, is just absolutely...
Happy was awesome. But the thing that amazed me so much about him was how political he was. He had really strong politics.
I didn't know that.
I know. He was very, very adamant left. And fascinating, because you don't pick up any of that in his art.
No, not at all, no.
Mimi, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Well, Ann, I just want to, in talking about culture in Taos, Taos is the only place in the world, I think, during the summer for 4 months of nonstop music. And it's the best groups that a lot of times you can't even get tickets for them in New York.
Well, I guess I was thinking more about visual culture.
Okay. For me, music, it's all tied together for me. And I feel like during the summer, I am like a child. I go there and I salivate and I sit there with my mouth open and I just let the music feed me.
Well, I'm partially deaf. That's the other problem.
I know. Sorry.
No, and I prefer classical music. It's a preference.
It is classical music.
Oh,
now
I know. And I do go to concerts. I strap on my hearing aid and whip out the Seeing Eye Dog, and we go listen to Mozart.
Well, I hope you catch a couple more, because there's still, there's the Angel Music and Angel Fire, and the last concert it was a chamber classical music, and people were jumping up and down from the floor. because it was so exciting.
That could happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For you to
No, it's just, coming from a city like New York, where you have your choice of a zillion museums, a zillion galleries, a zillion movies. I guess I'm a little spoiled, but then I was also complaining that it was overload.
True. Cool. Mimi, thanks. Ishmael, how are you? Go ahead.
I'm fine. How, Ann? It's nice to meet you here. So I was checking your Vasari 21 website, and I would like to hear a little brief.
Where are you? I can't see you.
He's in Sao Paulo. Congratulations on winning
I'm
the
in Sao
Olympics.
Paulo,
But,
Brazil.
can you hear him okay?
I can hear him. I just don't know where he is visually.
I don't know. I saw him all right. Ishmael, if you talk a little more, maybe you'll show up. Why don't you ask your question again louder?
Okay, so I was asking you, Ann, about your website, Vasari 21. I would like to hear a little notes from you about the interactive forums. I know good things about the essays, and your podcast is interesting. So I'd like to hear about the interactive forum. How does it work? What you can address to us?
You got that, Ann, the interactive component.
Well, perhaps I should really reword some of that. When I first launched the site, I had a vision of having a sort of face-like aspect to it, that where artists could post their work and keep blogs and et cetera, et cetera. But it's unusual because I just realized, people probably wouldn't use it. Facebook is way too popular and it's way too established, but it's become interactive in other ways, in that I really feel like I'm interacting with the artists so much more. Maybe there'll come a time when I can do something like this, where I have a podcast and then people can listen and ask questions of the person I'm interviewing. So, there's a realm of possibilities. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, thank you.
And I try to hook up artists with each other. I have if an artist is going to San Diego, and I know members in San Diego, I say, go see these people, go talk to them. Find out about shows, find out about galleries. And that's fun. It's really great.
It's not dissimilar from what I'm doing, and it's fun, and we're performing a service, and people frequently benefit from them. It's pretty cool.
Well, I forgot to mention that I also did a profile of Kate, who's here with us, Kate Petley, who, you talk about interactive. I was up there for my birthday. I'm not telling you what birthday. And she took me out with her friends for a birthday celebration. It was great. And I got to see her work firsthand, and it was just a
say hi.
Hi. And you got snowed in.
I didn't mind a bit. And her husband's
snowed in.
And I read this. Never mind, I'm not going to go there.
All right, then. Richard, your turn. Go ahead.
What are 3 common things about an artist that kind of slaps you in the face and say, I got to find out more about this artist? And if you...
Wait a minute. Stop there if that's the end of the question.
Extension with it.
Let's say it again.
I have an extension to go on.
Go ahead. What are the 3 things that make you pay attention to an artist? And
if this an artist is intentionally doing those things, can you see through it that they're intentionally doing that to get your attention?
All right.
What I look for, it's funny. Let me give you an example. I did some gallery hopping on Saturday down in Santa Fe, and I realized that the thing that really held my attention was a video by an artist. I don't like, some video artists I love, but it was just so engaging. It was so fresh. It was so irreverent. And I'm blanking on his first name. He's a Native American. His last name is Monkton, Monkton. And the video was charming and smart and funny. And I look for that. I look for an original voice. I can sometimes see when an artist is relying too much on, what do I want to say, on his or her training, perhaps, okay, one more variation on abstract expressionism, but sometimes there's a twist that is wholly the artist's own. I would say out of 95% of the people who signed on to the site have a voice, and 5% are kind of clueless. And you look for, sometimes I'm only going on 1 or 2 images, but I've just gone, wow, I can't believe what I'm seeing. This is so good.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yep, that helps. Can you read to it if somebody's putting on an act?
Can you give me an example of what you consider to be an act?
Well, if they're just saying, hey, I got to be original, got to be doing something bizarre, you're doing something crazy, just so I get attention. Can you...
but what is an act, not an act? What is an act, not...
or are we all...
What is an act successful? What is someone doing a parody, for instance? Yeah. Something that looks like... I think oftentimes, if you have one image and you go to the website, you might see that there's an inconsistency, but you also might see that the inconsistency is intentional. An artist does videos. Perfect example being, oh God, I'm blanking on her name too. Rachel Harrison, who's all over the place. You could see, let us take another example. Let's say somebody decides they're going to do drip paintings in the manner of Jackson Pollock. And trust me, there's still people around making drip paintings. But sometimes they somehow go beyond the drip and they're pushing into new territory. You can see that, yeah. But you can also see when it's a pastiche, when it's an imitation.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Carol, I see that you want to say something. Carol Rose Brown, go ahead.
Hi.
Oh, hey, Carol. Hi.
Hi.
Where are you?
I just want to say hello. It's so good to see you there and hear what you have to say.
There you are.
That's all. Thank you. Thanks for being there.
Well, Carol's an interesting example of an artist who's gone through some pretty rough times. She's made some big changes in her art. She did wonderful pictures of bears, for instance. But these were bears that went beyond illustration because they just had a certain ferocity about them. And lately she's been doing photography, and it's so spooky. It's like Twilight. It's so original. It's so unusual. And I wanted to see how she made it. And so I went out, visited her, and profiled her. But you just know when somebody's got the stuff. I'm probably not being terribly articulate about this, but I think artists know it too. Are we gone?
No, I was just showing Carol's website.
Oh,
Okay.
thanks, Paul. Thank you.
I don't know if you can do the slideshow or not.
Well, I can do all that stuff, but she's not the only person here. I just...
Okay.
Paul, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm often surprised when I take artists along with me to do gallery tours. I get a fresh set of eyes, and I learn things like an artist will dismiss something. But I didn't go to fine arts college. I didn't go to, I didn't get a BFA or MFA. And an artist can often say, oh, God, that's the kind of stuff we were doing in graduate school. But I don't see that. So it's helpful to have other opinions on things. And I really think artists know themselves when they've hit pay dirt, when they're on the right track. And they also know when they're stalled. That's another piece I want to do for the story about what do you do when you're blocked or you're stalled. A famous example being Bruce Nauman couldn't make art for 2 years. He had a little stipend from Leo Castelli. He was in despair. It was...
Who?
This is not Bruce Nauman.
Oh, Nauman. I thought you were talking about Scarpetta. Okay.
But every artist, I think, and these could also be opportunities to just say, you know what, I don't think I should be making art right now. Maybe I should go visit a Zen retreat. Maybe I should get married. Maybe I should have a kid. Maybe I should just do something else with my life until the energy returns and the ideas.
I was reading this quote the other day about Alan Watts talking about how your life shouldn't be a journey, but it should be like maximizing the moment, essentially. And he was comparing life to music, and how music you don't write or play with the intent of getting to the end. You don't create it to be the fastest musician. You create it so that each part of it has an intrinsic quality to it, that you play music. And as soon as I heard the word play music, I went right away to artwork.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah. And we talk about, my work is about. I last showed my work. I'm working today.
I know. But are artists working or playing? I mean, are they playing any less than a musician is playing? As a musician, I haven't figured this out at all.
Well, I would have to mull on it a bit too. Yeah, you don't hear a musician ever saying, well, I'm working the violin today.
Yeah,
So,
I'm working on watercolors. I'm playing with my watercolors.
this may be just,
You doing finger paints?
because I think a lot of artists are very playful in their work, and that they
Totally.
do find that it's about play. If it's not fun, why do it? You could do something else with your life at any age,
Yeah.
or you could come back to it. So I don't know if that's a philosophy or not. I'm supposed to be interviewing Marina Abramovic tomorrow, and her work is all about pain. It's self-inflicted pain. It's terrible, terrible pain. Do you think she's playing?
No.
No, I think she's into, I don't know what she's into. It's almost psychotic.
There's a lot of generosity in her work.
There is generosity, but there is also torture, self-inflicted torture. You know, if you want to talk about performance artists who have fun, look at Laurie Anderson.
Oh, God, yeah. Beautiful.
I mean, there is a woman gets out there, tells stories, plays music, makes a movie about her dog. Lou Reed dies, and she goes on. She's still playing. She's having a damn good time.
I think Linda Benglis is, too. Again. Richard, did you have another question? You're unmuted.
No, not really.
Okay.
I started something today. I just started my first ever class in art, and I'm wondering if I'm going to disdain it. I tried to go in my first art class 41 years ago, and bit the bullet and did it today. I don't know. See once. I've been floating. Am I going to regret it?
You're ahead of me, man. I've never had one.
Yeah.
You read what?
I don't know. He just signed up to take an art class. Is it a studio or art history class?
No, it's a studio class. Actually, 3 of them.
Report back. I bet you learned something, but not what you expected.
Probably not.
What kind of class? Drawing, painting, sculpting?
Drawing, 2D design, and 3D design.
On the computer?
No, on on paper. Yeah. So there's going to be some sculpting, there'll be some 2D with relief on paper, etc. But then basically drawing with pencil and charcoal and the other class. So.
Well, I think no matter what vocation you're in or avocation, you need to stretch your mind in different directions. Mimi's talking about listening to music and what that does for her head. So I'm back to painting. I'm not sure it's very good, but if I don't get myself out of the sight for a few hours a week, I'm gonna implode. I'm gonna become like Donald Trump. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that probably. It's dangerous.
You have a ways to go. Is there such a thing as a regional artist anymore?
In the tradition of, say, Thomas Hart Benton or Grant Wood or...
Yeah. Or, who am I trying to think of in Taos? Some of those guys. How about the Tao School?
Think of a regional artist. We've got tons of people who are painting hollyhocks, and they're painting the pueblos, and they're doing this, and they're still doing this. And is that? But they're not.
Who am I thinking of? D.H. Lawrence?
They sell work. How about, I don't know, Ed Sandoval? Good God.
Lockwood's the name that's coming to mind, but I can't figure out who that is. At any rate.
I think the art world is too global, really, in some ways, and people who get labeled regional probably hate it. And we may be talking about a different kind of artwork.
So if somebody only did pictures of the Grand Canyon, is that a regional artist?
I think you could still, there's a photographer here in Taos named Dion Cowler, and I don't know, Mimi, if you've ever seen her work. She's another one that they are extraordinary. I mean, she's back to the kind of old Ansel Adams black and white photography, but they take your breath away. They're not postcards. They're not, iPhone pictures. They're really that someone can take subject matter that corny and find a way to make it fresh is to me incredibly admirable.
So the internet has gotten rid of regionality.
I don't know. I think so. I'm blanking on anyone I would call a regional artist at this point.
So let me ask you this then. I saw a statistic on Facebook or chart that said Uber, the world's largest taxi company, owns no taxis. Airbnb, the world's largest hotel and booking company, owns no real estate. Amazon, is that right? Owns no inventory?
Right.
Huh? Etc. What does this mean for the art world?
I don't see the analogy. Sorry to be dense, but
Well, all of those are about ownership, or the absence of ownership of physical property. Or two things, absence of ownership of physical property and transactions conducted without a gallery, transaction conducted on a website.
are we talking about conceptual art?
Maybe. What happens? So what your opinion is that there will always be painting, there will always be physical art. We will never create a file and send it electronically to you so that you can print it out at home on your computer and glue it to your wall. I just made that up.
It depends on what you're going to call art. I mean,
Hey, we're printing buildings now.
Yeah.
It's not too
Some people work entirely on the computer. There's a guy in Santa Fe, I'm blanking on his name as well, and he does wonderful, wonderful graphics. Not graphics, they're like abstract paintings. They're collage, they're elements you've never seen before, and he prints them out. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yep. Except he doesn't put them out. He sends them somewhere and somebody else puts them out because they pay.
He tries to sell them in his gallery. He doesn't have an affiliation with gallery.
Yeah.
He shows a little bit here at Holst Warman.
Are those kinds of things going to happen much more?
I think people are going to find things to do with the computer that are going to blow your mind. That I just saw this Chuck Close tapestry. He sends a digital file to a tapestry maker in Belgium, and I can't remember the threads per second type count of it. It's extraordinary. It's drop dead fabulous. Of one of his big photorealist paint. Well, you won't call them photorealist. That's kind of inaccurate. But his big painting of Lou Reed, black and white painting, turned it into a tapestry. I was floored. It was so extraordinary.
Who?
So these are the sorts of things people are learning. There's going to be technology that we don't know about because there are little kids out there who are growing up with iPads and iPhones and computer monitors, and their creativity is going to be either smashed by all this or engaged. And I predict a lot of people will become engaged with what you can. Look what people do with Photoshop now. April Gornick, a wonderful painter, does sketches for her paintings using Photoshop.
Yeah, I've interviewed her. It's fun. She's really good. Really thoughtful. Interesting. All right. Who else has a question? Who's that? Hi, Brandon. Go ahead.
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
fabulous. Hi, Ann. It's so great to listen to you guys tonight. And thanks, Paul. This is so great.
Hey, you're a sweetheart. Thank you.
I just saw a gorgeous show of David Hockney's work that he did on an iPad. I think we can't even fathom what people will do with computers in minutes from now.
Paul, I'm not hearing her very well. Is there a question?
Yeah, and I wasn't so clear. I don't know if it was a question as much as a comment about having seen a show recently of David Hockney's that was all done on an iPad and how.
Oh, yeah, on his iPhone. Extraordinary stuff. There's an artist on my site named Phyllis Ideal who does iPhone drawings and then enlarges them using a printer, and they're beautiful. They're really something. They're black and white. They're like almost Abex a little bit, but very much her own work.
Say hi to Phyllis for me. I haven't talked to her in a bit. That's cool.
Oh, she's great.
I know. She's a ball of fire. Who else has something they would like to ask? I don't see any hands there. Look at that. I have 2 screens full. Anybody?
God, I feel like I'm not doing my job here.
Hey, we only got a couple minutes left. You're covered. Tanner, go ahead.
Hi, Ann. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with your website and what kind of sets you apart from, I guess, everybody else that's trying to promote us or something like that for artists to get involved with? What do you pride yourself on with your site?
I'm sorry, say that again.
He wants to know what distinguishes you from the others and how come you're better than everybody.
I don't think I have a rival on the web. I'm sorry to be arrogant. But I looked at Artsy, that's for collectors. I look at hyperallergic. I look at artinfo.com. I look at artnews.com, artnewsonline.com. These are mostly news stories about, Donna Velasco just became curator of the Upper Slavonia Biennial. I don't care. I want to be useful. I want to give service. I want to investigate things that you guys want to know about. I'm very focused in my audience. And everybody, okay, Frank Stella has a retrospective. That's wonderful. He deserves it. Every damn magazine is writing about Frank Stella, a newspaper. You pick up the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. Nick Cave has a show at Mass Mocha. Well, that's great, but there's so many other artists out there who are doing interesting things too. The news media is just shutting down on the number of reviews that get published, on coverage of the art world. The New York Observer used to have much, much more coverage, as did the Wall Street Journal. So all of this, I think, is moving to the net. And as I say, I'm targeted in my audience. I want to hear from people. I want their story ideas. I want to know what they want to know about. I just did a story this week. It just launched like 2 hours ago. Guy writes to me through Vasari21, said, do you ever write anything about older artists? And then he happened to drop he told me, he's a very modest, self-effacing person. He just told me a few hints about his biography, that, his child had been kidnapped by a crazy ex-wife. His fire destroyed his loft. A business partner ripped him off. And I said, well, send me some images. And he did, and I love the work. And I said, I got to write about this. I mean, this is great. So write to me and tell me, I want to hear something about, I want to know about artists who are painting pussycats in a new and whatever.
Do you guys hear how many people say, write to me, and you guys are not doing that? Or maybe you are. But if you are, things are going to start happening. William, proceed.
Well, even art dealers who are inundated by email have told me over and over, yes, write to me. Be sure to embed an image in your letter so that the dealer can see, doesn't have to open anything, doesn't have to worry about viruses, it's there. And they tell me, okay, it might take a few weeks. It might take a couple of months. Follow up. Just say, did you receive my images? Very few people are going to, don't be scared. Very few people are going to be outright rude and say you have no talent. Or say, don't bother me, or my roster is full. And think about the times of years when you're approaching people. January is a slow month. The summer months tend to be slow.
September isn't the best
Fall
month.
season, leave people alone. Leave them alone at art fairs. Let them do their job. Don't go up to dealers or curators at art fairs. Curators, maybe. Because they've got other things on their mind. And be polite and be gracious, and you'd be surprised. And friend them on Facebook.
And post on Instagram. William, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in an interesting situation now where I'm helping my friend here, Ben Fell. We're launching an Indiegogo campaign and looking to approach media outlets such as yourself to help maybe propagate the information about that. Would you speak on how you or other media outlets like you might be interested in a story like that?
Well, I could tell you about my own experience because I started the site through an Indiegogo campaign. And I hit up every artist I'd ever written about, every artist I'd ever reviewed, every dealer I know, some dealers I didn't know, every friend. And I didn't at that point even have much of a Facebook roster of artists. And I managed to raise $34,000. And people were astonishingly generous. And artists, come on, sometimes I have no money. So $20, this is great. $10, that's great. They liked the idea of what I was doing. And I'm going to have to do another round of fundraising because my original site designer ripped me off so badly. But that's the way it goes. So is that helpful? Is that the kind of thing you mean?
Kind of, but I wanted to hear like you as a media outlet to share the story. On now you're on the other approach. We're looking to try to do the preemptive information pre-launch and approaching places like you, other Facebook groups that are, he's actually an architect / artist. He's going to be casting a 23 by 16 foot facade of a building in concrete. And so it's sculpture and public art and community-based work. And not sure if it's something that like that media outlets like you could post about or be interested in sharing about.
If you were a member of my site, I hate to sound, what's the word I want? Craven and opportunistic. If you were a member of my site, I would probably, I'd post it in an update.
Cool. You'll hear
and
from
the update, people love the updates. The updates go out about once or twice a week. If an artist has a show, if an artist got an award, if an artist is doing a fundraising campaign, yes, I post about that.
Awesome.
That's helpful. But man, I mean, go through your Rolodex if you still have such a thing. Go through every contact on your computer. And I had another artist from the site, Ted Larson, said his sister is a fundraiser. He said it took hitting up people 9 times to get them to open their wallets.
Right.
So be persistent. I wouldn't go after people 9 times. I just don't have the balls to do that. I don't have any balls at all, in fact, but that's another issue.
We'll send you 9 emails. It's okay.
7's usually enough. Becky, you get the last question. Go ahead.
It's a personal question. Just with when you say send a picture, I just know the medium I work with doesn't photograph very well. So do you really base on wanting to follow up with somebody just on that picture alone?
Frequently.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, but I think when you spent, all right, when you spent 25 years writing about the art world professionally, and you spent 8 damn years studying art history, I think you can know pretty quickly, don't you, Paul? What do you think?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what the medium is. You can see through, even though it's a quality photograph, you can still see through into that art.
Oh God, yes. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be cynical or cruel, but and I've talked with the art dealers here in town about this. How does this happen? You know, how is it that people keep doing these goddamn paintings of the Pueblo and the Indians and the hollyhocks and it's so kitschy, and a lot of it may have to do with training, or maybe this is what they want to paint, and that's fine. It doesn't interest me, and they find buyers and they find a market, and good for them. But yeah, you can see. I think you can see pretty quickly.
I mean, I think it's tough if you're looking at a Robert Irwin that's 3 inches by 3 inches to have any idea what you're looking at.
I don't know. I've never seen a Robert Irwin 3 by 3 inches.
No, but if it's a reproduction, it's 3 inches. If it's a piece of Robert Irwin shrunk to 3 inches square and you're looking at it, you probably don't get much sense of what his art is about.
No. I'm not saying that I'm going to get the whole of what an artist is about. I won't even get the whole from the website.
But one sec. My sense
I think
is, though,
there's something, let us say a musician plays a couple of bars of music. I think if you have an ear for music, you're going to know if it's on, a singer is an even better example. You're going to know if the person can sing, and you have an ear for music. So, but I would say 98% of the time you can see it. And sometimes you're kind of like, well, I don't know, I should see more. I'm on the cusp. Then I would go to the website. That I would,
I agree. Let me ask you a last question, Ann. Two questions. How many of these interviews have you done?
How many issues?
Interviews.
In my lifetime?
Well, no, mostly for Vasari.
Well, I've done one a week since December 7th, so you would have to add that up for me.
So you're in the neighborhood of 40? So
I'm not good at math.
No, you're 30-something. But when are you going to do a book?
About what?
A compendium of the essays.
I suppose that could happen, but I got to tell you, just like print journalism, fine art publishing is in the toilet. It's too expensive. It's too small an audience. The internet, once again, has moved in. People will do specialty books. That's quite different. A limited market, like Radius Books in Santa Fe. Maybe, when I become a big famous star, yeah. Okay, maybe then.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going to unmute everybody. Ann, you have been awesome. It's been delightful speaking with you. I really appreciate
it's fun.
you, and
You'll
I
have to have me
appreciate
back.
everything you do. You'll have to.
Remember my apron.
I have to be on your show first. Everybody is on your Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
very much.
Good night, Al.
Good night. Good night, Ann.
Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night, Al.